So next we have something about I haven't watched any of these videos early before watching them. All these are new to me. So one we have something about the EVs being a nightmare for the US car industry. And when you think of it, there has been a lot of new EVs coming into the industry in the US right now. And because Tesla is no longer the only one, it's not the prize jewel anymore. So let's dive into this. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. It helps out the algorithm. I really appreciate it. And share.
There's a situation where Joe Manchin was the player who Washington really just had to sort of bend to his will, and he was really reluctant to allow for electric vehicles to continue to get tax credits. He was opposed to them, and he said, "Okay, industry, we'll give you these tax credits, but you build me a supply chain." That, of course, sort of didn't take into account sort of, the complexities of the supply chain and the fact that China is just so dominant in this space. And they've really sort of, methodically, for a time quietly, built this, staggeringly strong position in terms of, the control of, the inputs, whether it's, nickel and lithium, graphite. These inputs are going to be really, really difficult to source. Not only just whether they're mined in China, but whether they're sort of processed and refined, and the sort of cost difference that the West is going to have to sort of overcome really just can't be sort of overstated at this point.
And folks, if you want to see this article, it's a fantastic article, really deeply reported, great graphics, makes it easy for me because I like the pictures. Bloomberg.com/big take is kind of where you find it. Big team effort. So, Craig, I see in your reporting here, in 2023, the IRA required that at least half of the value of battery components had to be assembled in North America, and that 40% of the raw materials had to be sourced from the U.S. And in 2027, that raw material requirement is going to double to 80%. Are those numbers, can they be achieved in that time frame?
I think that's one of the things that it sort of depends on which company you ask, and I think some of the concerns that the industry is having here is the fact that some of these raw materials, the prices have really collapsed, and that you would sort of think, oh, that's a good thing for the auto companies, but if you're trying to build a supply chain in North America for these raw materials, and the prices for them have absolutely, sort of the bottom has come out. I think of lithium in particular, you've seen just this dramatic, drop in prices that significantly undermines the economics of those projects. And so, I think the raw materials in particular are a real challenge. I think battery components will be less of a challenge, but even there, it is a matter of you can't just sort of snap your fingers and open up a bunch of plants for these various components. It does take time, to put, dig up the ground and put up these plants that are coming, but are taking some time.
And Craig, across the automakers, I'm looking at the reporting again. 7 of Tesla's 12 models sold in the U.S. fully cleared the IRA's sourcing hurdles and qualified for the tax credit. What percentage of EVs being sold in the U.S. are clearing that hurdle?
I think because Tesla is still so dominant in the U.S., we're at a point where the EVs that do the most volume are largely qualifying at the moment. But I think the fact that those raw material requirements that kick in next year and then escalate in the years that follow, that's really where we're going to see even more of a sort of level of screws put on the industry. But I think the other car maker that I think is particularly well positioned, I'll call out to General Motors. I think the fact that they have a localized supply chain for batteries, they have a joint venture with a Korean battery supplier. We're seeing more and more of those partnerships. Ford following suit, Stellantis, the maker of Jeep, and Chrysler. Similar deal where they're setting up battery plants in North America and sort of on and on. But those projects, I would say, are much further behind where we have Tesla which for years has been making batteries out in Nevada with Panasonic, and GM, which has a partnership with LG in US.
So that's shocking, yo. There's a lot of things that they talked about. One, the first thing I want to say is Tesla got their first positive thing that I've heard all year. I haven't heard anything positive from Tesla since this year started, and the first thing he said is they still have a strong foothold in the US, which is true. They do for now. It all depends on how they go now on in the future. If they're going to stay stagnant, then it's going to cause a problem. But if they want to continue to innovate better, then while they have the lead, then that's what they should be doing, and they wouldn't even be worried as much, most likely. But the one thing that I really want to sit here and talk about is he even brought up BYD. He talked about China and how they secretly they didn't secretly do it, but like how BYD was able to get that foothold in China and get all the tax breaks and all the other things to be able to innovate and grow at a way quicker rate. He was talking about that when we went over the whole BYD stuff earlier this year, and he's talking about how other people in the US want to kind of do that same thing. They want to, not only for AI chips and things, they don't want to create them in the US so that more money is coming from the US along with innovation, but also we're going to have the batteries and stuff. Yeah, 40% of the vehicle can come from the US, but they want more of that. They want the more that you can create home, like how Apple does, where Apple makes stuff in their own company, the better. They make all their own chips and keep it to themselves and be able to develop. That's something that BYD does in their own format, and they do it all within their country of China. Most of their products come from China. So they want to kind of have the same format and expect to grow with these companies in America. And he's saying the only two companies that can do that right now are GM and Tesla. GM, Tesla. They're the only two right now. Now, mind you, I think it's going to be a lot more than that as more companies in the US start to develop into EVs and move into EVs and stuff like that. There's going to become a higher need. And when the higher need comes, more stuff is going to be created, especially in the US, and be able to grow from that and be able to get benefits from that. But that is literally the outlook that Tesla and their shareholders and board should be thinking about right now, and that the government should be thinking as well too. Hey, these other countries are doing this better than us. How can we meet that requirement or get up there or become better than them at it? These are all things that we need to think of ideas of stuff to do. Like as I said, we went over this earlier this year, and that was the first major nail in the coffin for Tesla this year that we were talking about. Hopefully by the end of the year, there's a lot more of going down this track where, hey, you're the leading EV place in the US. Can you develop more in house? They already got their batteries in house. That's or in America and stuff in the US. He said the places in Arizona or something like that along those lines. But that is literally what we need to strive for and what the goal should be overall.
Hey, Craig, I think the narrative out there, just kind of the bigger picture on EVs right now is, gee, maybe demand isn't as high as we all thought at one point. We've got, the big auto manufacturers pulling back, like Ford, for example. Loss is still big. What's your understanding when you talk to your sources as to how people are thinking about the ultimate demand for EVs over the next 1 to 3 to 5 years?
I think, perversely, it was a challenge that, for a time, business was too good.
Yeah.
The fact that, for a while there, so many companies, actually had back orders. Tesla in particular, had demand issues as opposed to a supply issue. That, really sort of caused this, unsustainable, jacking up of prices. The fact that that has had to come down I would say more dramatically than we've seen for the rest of the industry, has had all sorts of unintended consequences when you so dramatically bring down prices on the new side. The used side of the equation. The used vehicles really lose their value, and the fact that I think EVs maybe have some sort of particular challenges with maintaining their value. When you think about a used gas car, you don't worry about the engine holding up. You maybe have relatively more concern, rightfully or not, as to whether or not the battery is going to hold up. And so what we're seeing is that really come into play in terms of total cost of ownership. I think that's one of the things that we've really paid close attention to lately. I think when we step back, the fact that EVs is sort of the way forward, particularly in terms of where the regulators want to see this industry go. I think we've seen that China is able to make this work. We've seen that Europe is much further along in this transition. I think the question for the U.S. is whether we can sort of get Americans who tend to like bigger vehicles to come around to electric vehicles. I think that also adds some complications to the mix as well.
So another thing that he's even saying, I didn't even know Europe, how strong Europe's hold was in the whole EV market. I like from what we learned about BYD, they learned a lot of stuff from they sent a lot of stuff to Europe, and they're starting to bring more of their vehicles and stuff within Europe in European countries right now. I had no clue that Europe. I don't know any companies in Europe that are main EV contributors right now. I know there's a lot of car companies, of course, over there, but I never knew how well they're doing. I don't know exactly how well they're doing per se. Maybe that's something that we can look at. We can look at other companies besides outside of US and BYD and things. And besides Tesla and BYD, we can talk about a lot more EVs and where these companies are coming from and how they're going into different markets and things. Because I know they're out there, but how much attention are they really getting and bringing? If you like, that's something that I'm not too aware of right now, but I would love to learn it. Another thing he was talking about, like the cost of materials and things, they used to cost a lot more, and it would have been good if they were cost more to for profits. But now price of materials in general across the world have decreased. So when it comes to outsourcing those materials to other companies and stuff, you're not going to be able to make more money if you're developing these materials within the US. That's what one of the main problems that he was talking about. And I really think that's something that's really true. It's very true. It's going to be that way for who knows how long, and just go from there. But yeah, that's really interesting on how now we're seeing a lot of more information about getting that stuff more in house within American companies or being on American soil. I knew that was such a major thing for AI chips. That's something that they want to do, but now they're doing it even more for other types of technology companies and stuff. They want to bring all of this stuff in to us so that we can just benefit from the profits and the revenue and stuff like that. Because how companies perform in a country, it boosts up the country way more than you realize. That's why China gave them AV company BYD so many breaks and stuff, so that their economy can soar way further than it already is. So that's just it.